I was wondering just like with us kind of catching up, what what your current practice looks like. Like what does your how do you feel like your Buddhist practice is manifesting for you now? How do you like to best express it, and what maybe inspires it for you?
Sure, yeah. So I'm coming from Gelug Tibetan lineage. My teachers being Lama Zopa Rinpoche, Tenzin Geshe, and of course His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Um, and so, that's the formal way of putting it. But day to day, I very much just try to practice everywhere I can. When I'm in grad school right now, and that's a pretty busy life, and I'm working two jobs in between that. And so, as crass as it sounds, when I'm in the shower, I'm practicing. When I'm on the toilet, I'm practicing. When I'm on the train to go to school, I'm practicing. And now all of those look a little different. I try to even have me time in those more personal moments at home, where I can contemplate and go through my day. But when I'm on the train, I'm doing prayers, I'm doing mental prostrations, I'm doing mantra. When I'm at work, I'm really blessed to be working for a part of Harvard Divinity School called the Buddhist Ministry Initiative. So I help bring together Buddhist community and those that are called allies of the Buddhist community to join us for learning and community dinners, lectures, events. But also, I help coordinate all of the noon services for Harvard Divinity School right now, and so that's a really rewarding process. And so yeah, where do I find my practice day to day is in the thick of it. I try to keep on top of what's going on up here, so I can give people the best throughout my day.
And thank you for sharing that because I know that's you're sharing a very personal I guess expression of that practice or of practice where in these little me times that you get you can kind of squeeze in or otherwise have some sort of routine in place where you can get into your contemplative side, your reflective side, and do these mental prostrations, which is a it's a wonderful phrase. And I was wondering, just like when it comes to the expression of your practice, like, do you find that it is guided through a lot of visualizations? Do you find, or do you find it through something like chants or something like and anything else in particular, even just the thinking through the physicality of it? I was just wondering what that looks like for you.
Sure, yeah. Really great question there. So on the ground, I'm very much trying to embody the ideal of Vimalakirti, right? Every instance that I'm coming in contact with, every moment of engagement is an event to practice. And then from there, as you were mentioning, how that looks in terms of sensory. I have to admit again, I'm Tibetan Gelug, so it is the maximalist approach. I have my beads, I have the mental visualization. I'm kind of sometimes murmuring even the mantra out loud, and maybe I get a few stares on the train as I'm going to school, as everybody else is going to work. But yeah, it's definitely I'm engaged in all ways that I can be to ground myself. Um, but in terms of specifics, lately I've really been leaning on my Vajrasattva practice. It's just this daily purification of myself to go deep inside and to look at what I could have done better throughout that day. Not necessarily, that I disrupted somebody's, social situation, but just, maybe I was in a situation where I felt a little more irritated than I necessarily had to feel, because I wasn't watching my mind as closely. And so that has really helped me to stay grounded as I've been so busy this last year.
Certainly. And and thank you for that too, because like there's certainly space in my practice that I can kind of incorporate things. I come from more of like a Soto Zen approach, but there's certainly more intentional times that I can set out to look at the day, look at myself through the day, and assess certain moves or certain occasions or certain circumstances that I could have navigated better or did navigate in a way that felt very balanced, and kind of give myself a little acknowledgement around those things. So it's great that you have that practice worked in, and or that routine worked in, and two, like what I also really appreciated about what you said just earlier about your work, not just like with your own personal practice and the way that you approach it, but also too like in one of your modes of working, you're working for the Harvard um, Buddhist department, and like you're working within the Masters of Divinity department and helping facilitate and coordinate the work that they're doing there, and that might feel, not to make too much of an assumption, but you're helping kind of support Dharma in that way, in that kind of function. And I think it's a wonderful thing that you have a impact in, but also have as a part of your life. But also too, I mean that's one thing, and then you also have your work with Rainbodhi and Rainbodhi USA within that. And I was just wondering, like, what inspired you to get into that, and if you could just also speak a little bit about what Rainbodhi is, because it's a wonderful organization. I just wanted to hear about it from you.
Yeah, I'm so blessed to be a part of Rainbodhi. So, as a practitioner who identifies as queer and trans, I recognized a need for community outside of our normal sanghas, where we can find joy and, well, as well as just to help each other understand our specific suffering, right? And so, due to the current political and cultural climate, well, I'll add that it's not necessarily geographically locked. I can't even just say in the States because all over the world, our queer brothers and sisters are suffering. But so queer folks, but especially trans folks, are having a pretty tough time out there right now. And so, with this framing, the central need of my ministry addresses well, it's like a profound lack of safe, visible, and religious and authentic spiritual community for queer Buddhists or people who identify as queer and as Buddhists. And so, a place where queer folks can come together and like literally just take off the baggage for a while, I think is really special. Giving a space for these people to be confident in their bodies, in their minds, come together to participate in joy is certainly I rejoice in that. But also challenging each other within the context of our shared faith, right? I think spiritual friendship is the whole of the life, as many of us have read in our scriptures and heard from our teachers. So that's really important. And you may know we're seeing a large portion of queer folk who have spiritual needs that have been excommunicated from their communities, right? And so now they carry just an immense amount of suffering and trauma from their religious backgrounds. And so I've noticed quite a bit of our community is made up of that population who need just a little bit of extra care and patience and love and support. And I was actually reading something the other day. It was some statistics. I forget who published it, which is a shame on me for even mentioning it then. But I'll have to look it up again. But it was something around like 50% of queer people who identify as queer, also identify as religious or spiritual. So, so that really shows you, I think, right there, just like how needed a community like Rainbowdy is needed, how important it is, in my opinion. If others have better ideas or models, I'm like all ears always. But Rainbowdy's what we've got. And so I've been the director of Rainbodhi USA now for 3 years. And it's been just like a great joy of leading the International Sangha. Um, Dedicated to supporting queer Buddhists through various means of connection is really important. But we focus on like meditation, teachings, social events. We have a lot of social events in Rainbowdies in Singapore and Australia. Haven't done one yet for US, but hopefully in the future. And so, but going back to different ways of showing up is something that's very important to me is showing up for our queer monastics. Many of them hold Vinaya, so they can't have jobs. They have to rely on patronage or donations, right? Dana. And and so not only do I get joy in connecting queer lay practitioners with these monastics, um, but these monastics don't all have the privilege to come out publicly as queer, right? So there's a lot of background work to that too. But generally, we get to show up for the Triple Gem in that way, and we're helping to give a platform to those that can um, be public about their identities, be visible, and have a way to support sangha and receive dana from their side. Um, so this specific issue has been at the forefront for why I think Rainbodhi is important, and a perfect example of how it strives to uphold the most fundamental teachings of the Buddha. Not all Rainbodhi chapters are running the same. I think that's what's really unique too. We're very, very decentralized, even though we have the same grounding manuals. We're still kind of out doing our own thing. So we all get to lean into our strengths. Um, but with that being said, I feel like Rainbow's values align closely, almost entirely, to my own vision of ministry, just in general, as a means of advocacy. Um, there's been just a great amount of healing and empowerment through this work for our community, to put it simply. I think that we have to show up for each other in times like these. There's no other option, at least not for right now, I don't think. Queer people need each other, and to come together under our shared faith and values is something I think that is really, really special. And I really cherish that the amount of time that I've been doing Rainbodhi has certainly helped me with my own practice and my own self. It's not just about giving. I certainly take from the community also that I'm helping to lead. So in that way, it's really, really beautiful and leans into this idea of interdependence. And when we're making these wishes for, all sentient beings to be happy, it's in those moments where we realize that we're a part of that prayer. And so the work that we do benefit from it. There's no doubt. So yeah, my leadership in this role has taught me that marginalized communities, particularly queer individuals, often seek spaces where spirituality and identity can coexist, and that's a privilege right now, without exclusion or shame. It's really that simple, I think. So imagine that, right? People want to be loved, don't we all? So I hope to continue my work at Rainbodhi. I hope to continue my chaplaincy for all, not just Buddhists, outside of Rainbodhi, and create engaging programming that honors the needs of our community.
Certainly. Well,
Yeah,
and thank you for sharing so much, and thank you for your work. I mean, in preparation for our conversation, I learned a little bit more about Rainbodhi and what it offers and what it's been working towards all this time. And it seems like a really special organization. I believe it was founded in 2019, and I don't mean to purposely butcher this name, but by Buddhist monk Bhante Akaliko. Okay, okay,
perfect. Yeah.
okay, good, all right, great. In Sydney, Australia, and with the pandemic happening the way it happened, just like a lot of organizations, there was like a big online generation, like a big online community building moment for a lot of people, and so there became this ability to have a more widespread and international, global community that happened. And it's wonderful that you've been director for 3 years now, and that you have been enjoying the work that you've been doing because it's such a important thing to have people working towards visibility, accessibility, inclusion, and also too, I mean, just what you were saying about how there's a high percentage of people that both identify as queer, but also to have something spirit have some spiritual needs that are they're active about seeking and about active in exploring and active in seeking and want to be supported in. And so it's wonderful that something like Rainbody is accessible and available to everybody. And Rainbody makes a really special point on the website about how inclusive and how open the community is to just about everybody who wants to participate in that shared support and community. So it's really wonderful work. So thank you for doing it. And we can get into more of this in a minute. But something that I felt was particularly striking about Rainbodhi was that there is a uh, PDF that's accessible in multiple languages. I believe it's in 7 languages now, but it's welcoming the rainbow, a guide to LGBTQIA plus inclusion for Buddhists. It's a booklet, and it's just a great text to have for anybody that is looking to up their facility in understanding more about LGBTQIA plus needs and also just ways to make their own sanghas more supportive and open and accessible. So that's a big plug, but also too is just very relevant, I think, to what we were talking about. And we can get into more on that in a minute. But we alluded to this a little bit ago, but you were talking about chaplaincy, your approach to chaplaincy, and right now you're pursuing a Master of Divinity at Harvard to become a Buddhist chaplain. And I was just wondering what kind of informed that decision for you.
Yeah. So during my time, first off, thank you for recognizing Rainbodhi and sharing that information. We are very serious about that mission of accessibility and hopefully building on that every single day, especially for our neurodivergent family. So thank you. Yeah, I'm currently at Harvard Divinity School where I'm getting a Master's of Divinity. And so I have an undergraduate degree from UC Berkeley, and I really learned how to form my ideas at Berkeley. And so at Harvard, I'm kind of seeking to learn how to defend them and put them into action still. I'm still working on that part. And of course, I have a lifetime of experience from this. I ran a record label for a while. I also had a video store and numerous other adventures that were a part of throughout my life. But divinity school is something really unique and special, especially with the fact that HDS, Harvard Divinity School, is a pluralistic school. So you really get to practice deep listening and understanding as you try to take in everyone else's wisdom traditions or faith traditions, orienting systems. There's so many different names I'm learning now how people describe their own navigation through this life, and forge new friendships that you just never would have imagined were possible. I think that's so fun. So each and every day at Harvard is really surprising and shows me more and more how we're all the same, how we're all capable of so much love, so much caring, so much to give to the world. Um, and that is where everyone is the same, no doubt, at HDS. But overall, as I mentioned, my life has been shaped by a deep commitment to spiritual service and education, inclusive advocacy. So this is now the work that I have that I aim to expand through Harvard and my learning there. So I'm just really lucky to be there, and I'm in a great cohort. I think my vocational goals right now are to continue to develop my pastoral skills to support queer individuals within the Buddhist communities. But I'm still exploring the intersections of historical consciousness, lived religions, religious literacy, things like that. Um, but also, as I just said, deepening those friendships across different faith traditions and learning from each other. It's so powerful and so amazing, not just our own communities. And so that's really precious. So yeah, HDS is unique in that experience and has certainly affirmed my desire to pursue non-traditional kind of decentralized forms of ministry that I get to combine scholarship um, with service. So I'm really committed to academic side of things. Um, And so, yeah, it's just a space where I get to live out my dreams of being a scholar, like so many of our lineage holders before us and elders are. And so I'm a huge nerd when it comes to Buddhist studies. So I think that's another big plus.
Oh, wow, that's awesome. No, I think it's wonderful that you are that you made this decision after having gone to UC Berkeley for pursuing Buddhist studies there, and now you're continuing this continuing to feed that curiosity, continue to build on that momentum, and when you get there, when you get to Harvard to pursue this chaplaincy program, you are indeed feeling held and supported by it, and you're feeling affirmed and validated by your decision. So it's wonderful that you're feeling like continuing to feel that inspiration and to work towards it. And when it comes to just to understand it better, and you might have said this before, but when it comes to your work towards working with different organizations or faith traditions, maybe within the Buddhist umbrella, but maybe beyond, you'd be working towards kind of creating more inclusive practices towards queer and LGBTQIA plus kind of offering better like guidelines or offering better ways for communities to open themselves up. And would there be a community that would be outside of Buddhism that you'd want to work with, or like, or would you be available to? Because it sounds like there is that pluralistic element to your education now. Like, would you be open to working in different faith traditions than just Buddhism alone?
Yeah, so certainly, as chaplains, developing our pastoral skills, um, I'm not a Buddhist chaplain, right? I'm a chaplain for everybody. I happen to be Buddhist, and so therefore I know how to support my Buddhist community who is queer. So it may seem a bit reductive there, but I think we have something like 50 different faith traditions, and that's an odd, like real even odd number, right? It's a very clean number, but it's around there. Um, and I'm just amazed at the engagement that everybody is involved in. I mean, we're not just talking about queer rights, we're talking about animal rights, veganism, women's rights, disabilities, advocacy, prison abolition, um, uh, food access, help with utilities, houselessness, mental health crisis. It's really amazing over here at HDS the amount of work, the amount of free work. May I remind everybody the amount of free work that is being done by this amazing community just leaves me in awe. And I am so thankful to be in the presence of all that because it just makes it that much more motivating, really, to be honest, right? You see people doing good and you want to do better. You can kind of get competitive at it, not to denigrate what we're talking about here, but there's certainly something fun about being compassionate, right? What is that? So I'm really attached to those feelings when I'm in community with different faith traditions.
That's wonderful, and thank you for opening that up for me because and just sharing more about yourself as far as like being a chaplain goes because sometimes when I hear chaplain, sometimes it's like, oh, that's within the hospital medical field, or oh, that's within the military field, or prison and incarceration field. But when you say that it could have to do with food and like with unhoused populations and various other things that are a part of society that absolutely have elements of suffering or have like something like animal rights and veganism and things like that that have their own culture around their advocacy or that their activism. It's great to hear that you have this ability as a chaplain to enter into these different diverse fields and offer that compassion that is so contagious and so helpful and so loving and supportive. So thank you for adding more to that. And then just to go into more of your because you had mentioned how excited you are to continue that lineage of scholarship, and I know that you've written about decolonizing Theravadan studies and how bringing that kind of historical awareness to the fore, especially within your work as chaplaincy, is very important to you. I was just wondering uh, what your current academic interest is. What are you nerding out about? Like, what is it that you find yourself particularly diving into these days?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I during undergrad and then shortly after, I was very much building up kind of reflexive skills around post-colonial critique. It's something I'm very passionate about. I still am passionate about, but certainly it was just so easy for me to talk about those issues because I'm living in those issues right now still with in community. So I think there was a bit of a lure there for that side of Buddhist scholarship. And so right now, well, there's kind of two things. I'm we can go to the micro, the macro. We'll go to the macro first. So I'm trying to figure out what is past post-colonial critique. Because right now, the way I see it within scholarship, I think that we're past post-colonial critique. I think that anybody, worth their salt, as it's said, within Buddhist academics, within Buddhist scholarship and academia, um, has had the last 30, 40, 50 years of post-colonial critique to get their learning done and to get the things that we needed to say out. That's not to say that there's, still harm to be taken care of, but the lessons have been learned or are available to be learned, better way to put it. And so just like, the same issue of like what's postmodernism, I'm interested in what is the post-colonial critique? What is Buddhist studies supposed to be looking like as we enter this, 2026? Um, when we enter a new era of scholarship that allows you to be religious, allows you to explore religiosity, that isn't so necessarily focused on this Protestant lens and view on finding, obsessed with origination story. Um, so the way I study Buddhism right now starts with the idea that Buddhism is a scholarly aggregate label that can conceal heterogeneity, right? So, meaning when people say, oh, well, Buddhism says, I immediately get suspicious because that label can hide a lot of different voices, a lot of different places, a lot of different practices. So, my model forces kind of a simple discipline, right? In academic speak, this would be like every analytical claim must specify its operative unit and its scope. And so that translates to the operative unit is basically what exactly am I talking about here? What am I trying to say about a person, a role that was played, a text, an institution, a practice? Um, and scope is the kind of where and when, like what community, what place, what period. And the reason I'm strict about this is because the whole method is designed as sort of like a forensic method for preventing what is an issue, this unmarked reification and something called inference drift, right? So that's a fancy way of saying like I don't want to accidentally turn a label into a thing that acts on its own in my scholarship. And then what happens there is you start making bigger and bigger leaps without noticing. Um, you know, doing that, you can really get yourself into a mess. And your scholarship now has turned into a sort of a form of like fan fiction almost. Like it's just not really usable, right? It may sound good, it may make us feel good. Um, but is it usable? Does it help us view the world better? Um, so instead of treating Buddhism as like this main character, um, the way that I try to approach it within my model, it really starts to focus on the event of engagement. Now, this isn't necessarily new. This is W.C. Smith. This is my mentors, Charles Hallisey, Janet Gautso. But basically, what this is asking is like, where does Buddhism actually show up in a way that we can study? Real moments, people doing something, saying something, following rules, breaking those rules, arguing about those rules, teaching those rules, practicing those rules, whatever. And so the model tells me, what kind of evidence to look for. And this is another big word. It's called trace types. Um, so I'm looking for things that leave traces. That's what this trace types means, like embodied reports, institutional rules, material settings. You can go deep in the archives and look for administrative records, textual circulation, looking up the fingerprints. This is where philology and phenomenology gets really interesting. You can look at public procedure, right? I mean, it gets really curious. So, like, this is basically, what people report doing about themselves, what rules exist, what spaces and objects matter because they get written down or filed, or how texts move and how they get used. Um, and what happens in public in a repeatable way. You're looking for these patterns of human behavior. And I think one of the clearest, kind of rules to follow is like the scholar shouldn't be treating Buddhism as an acting subject, right? So I should never be saying that Buddhism did this. I'm trying to describe who did this, under what rules, in what setting, just to reiterate that. And so, you know, the social world, when we think about the social world as the intersubjective, like, it's a big, like, $10 words, intersubjective ecology of the local moral community, right? That sounds really heavy, but, like, yeah, it sounds intense, but it's like, the shared moral world people live inside together, local knowledge. And I like to focus on how real people navigate what's allowed, what's expected of them, what's rewarded, what's punished through speech, through behavior. Like, all these things are really, really interesting to me. Um, so if I'm going to say this caused that or this meant that, I have to point to something solid, an action I can quote, a procedure I can track. If I step beyond the evidence, we have to label it, right? It's okay to, like, think, oh well, what if, but this would be called like disconfirming conditions. Basically, what would prove me wrong if later evidence were to be supplied to us? And I think that's really important as a scholar to indicate within their research. I shouldn't be trying to hide the fact what might prove me wrong, right? Because that necessarily doesn't negate the effort that I put into my research. But I find a lot of scholars are doing that. So then when I'm reading other scholars, I like to look at, I like to reconstruct their explanation as a simple, like, chain. So for me, it's the trigger, the agent, the action, the ratifier, the sanction or reward, and then back to that trace. It's like, what set it off, who acted, what they did. Um, yeah. And so I do all this partly because there's a lot of common traps where we critique things, but we still don't end up. We critique things, but we still end up treating Buddhism, colonialism, authenticity, or the other as, like, stable actors still. Um, so we're trying to keep analysis at the human scale, grounded in people, settings. Um, so to wrap this up, I think the simplest way to say what it is, I study Buddhism by staying close to what can be shown, what happened, who did it, what constraints shaped it. I try not to speak more confidently than my evidence actually allows. But the wall that I was running into with post-colonial critique is that as scholars, we're trying to correct the wrongs that were done through scholars like T.W. Rhys Davis or the Polytech Society. But in that correcting, we overcorrect and we end up re-essentializing Buddhism in another way. And that's what's really dangerous. So that's what I hope to work on. I'm really hoping to create a new model of Buddhism for Buddhists and non-Buddhists to use going forward, and to keep these things in mind as I pull from my own wisdom and also the wisdom of my great mentors who I'm so lucky to have. That was a very long-winded answer, but
No, it was
uh,
wonderful. Yeah. No, thank you so much, and thank you for offering so much, and for doing that work of because I feel like it's not maybe everyone's cup of tea to really sit with Buddhist studies as it's been. and as it's presented now, maybe in classrooms or otherwise. And so there you are, kind of looking at how the critique is looked at, and that's not. I think some people, I mean, like myself, like I have a master's in Buddhist studies, and a lot of that work was, I mean, some of those classes focused um, on those critiques themselves, and then you have this question of, who watches the Watchmen, and so thank you for being one of those people that does that, and to offer a lot of grace around that post critique, and saying, well, and here's where I could be proved wrong, and it doesn't necessarily have a big chunk of ego that's being attached, where like this has to be so, and this is due to my evidence, which is thoroughly researched, yada yada yada. You can be like, well, and things change, and maybe they'll open up a cave somewhere and they'll find all these other documents that may make what I say quite irrelevant, or whatever it is. And so it's a wonderful thing. And also too, I mean, to sit with those questions of like what makes something post anything. I mean, immediately I thought of art movements and music movements where post-punk is kind of hard to define. It kind of is. Like, a lot of people can be post-punk, and like, is everything post-punk now? That it's all that it is are we so past punk that it's post? I'm not very good with music, but I know enough to know that it's like it's a big world out there. So and then same thing goes with art too. It's like, I mean, is everything that we see within an abstract, is everything that we look at postmodern? Is there something called post-contemporary? Like, how does that all work? So anyway, I just appreciate you diving very deep into the weeds to have that perspective, because not everyone can walk away from it feeling fulfilled. So thank you. Uh, and I know that also too, it was like with your scholarship, and also just with your interest in kind of working in a chaplaincy capacity, but also too your work with the Rainbodhi. There is a an activism element too, and that's kind of part of that lived innovative quality, I think, of Buddhist history and Buddhist culture. And just today, you gave a talk for the Rainbowdy community. It was open to whoever had the link. It was open to anybody, but this was today. You had a talk that was a part of the. Let me pull up the specifics here. It was part of the Buddhist and Queer series. This one centered around engaged Buddhism, and I was just wondering how that talk went, what came up for your Sangha today, and yeah, if you have any thoughts, anything that you'd want to share again.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, so anybody that's listening in the future, which is everybody, this talk that we're talking about is definitely should be on YouTube right now. So please go check it out. But so the Queer and Buddhist series is something I've personally led for the last 3 years with Rainbodhi USA. So it's been very special for me. I've held Dharma talks in the very beginning, but then we moved to Dharma conversations to help keep it alive. And now this last event that we just did was a full panel with the chapter leader of Rainbodhi Singapore and the chapter leader of Rainbodhi Canada. And so engaged Buddhism, something that I think that what we should be able to take away from it. If we're trying to respond to violence, or fascism, or just like outright state cruelty, whatever that looks like for all of us around this world, Buddhism doesn't give us permission to become violent back. The frame I kept coming back to for myself is strict nonviolence. The reason for that is protecting your own integrity, your virtue, and training the mind so you don't get consumed. I guess in Buddhist speak, we would say delusions, right? So we're in control of our faculties. Because if the goal is the end of suffering for us, then the method can't be creating more suffering. It just doesn't work that way. And so I know that can sound extremely impossible. I still grapple with it on a real level, on an existential level. because when people are being harmed, we want to retaliate. But the point I think I'm trying to make here is, the Buddhist response isn't built through retribution, retributive justice, or political domination. It's built around stopping the cycle. Like, you know, if we believe in impermanence, well, let's work our hardest at creating the change from the state that we don't want to the change that we do want. Let's work on the getting the impermanence to work in our favor. So the first thing I always try to be very clear about is nonviolence. But you know, this matters. Nonviolence doesn't mean passivity, right? We're not bypassing anything here. It doesn't mean compliance, complacency. A Buddhist can still protest. You can still resist. You can still refuse in so many different ways. Um, for those of us that are more privileged, we have more ways, but everybody has a way. And so the key is, like, how do you do it? So talking about engagement as skillful means things like refusing to follow orders that break your precepts, refusing to kill, to steal, to lie. Um, this is a concession. It's going to cost us our comfort, sometimes our status, our money, whatever. Because in this frame, losing virtue for us is much a bigger loss than any, what we say in Tibetan, worldly dharma. But maybe there's other, other lineages have different ways of saying that. But so then I think we shift the idea of activism a little bit. Like, what if activism is a kind of generosity? I think that's really important to think about. A gift to society, really. It's really no different than my chaplaincy, but dana. But it has to meet certain conditions always, right? It can't be rooted in harming others. We just talked about that, but it can't push others to harm people, right? We can't, although we have our own precepts to protect, even though other people around us may not have precepts, we still should not be leading them to break what the precepts hold true. And so it can't destroy also our own mental stability in that process, which is very hard, easier said than done. But if activism makes us hateful and unstable, then it's kind of working for the enemy, psychologically speaking, right? And there's a lot written on that. I won't go too deep into that, but I think talking about truth is interesting because that one gets complicated fast under oppressive powers. Um, you might be in a situation where telling the truth um, isn't to your advantage, um, but the practice can still ask you to avoid lying. So we need to be careful. We need to be skillful speech, right? That's what I'm getting at. Not giving information without speaking a falsehood. We have to get creative here in resistance. Um, that's the kind of like mental discipline I'm talking about. So you resist without becoming, the thing that we're resisting, so to speak. So the real heart of that talk, honestly, is inner work. As Buddhists, we know that nobody can do this work for us. If we could, the Buddha would just bop everybody on their heads. 2,500 years ago, we wouldn't be here. Everything would be cool. But that is something that we accept in the Four Noble Truths as we step upon on the path, our path, our path. It doesn't mean that we're not relying on community or other resources, but there's still so much internal work that we need to be doing. I think people underestimate how central the mind is in Buddhist political engagement. Um, the practice isn't only like what you do out there; it's what you are becoming in here, inside of yourself. So, goodwill and metta, even towards oppressors. It's again easier said than done. But and to be clear here, goodwill isn't about approval. It's not about liking them. It's not about excusing them. It's not wishing that they stop creating the causes of suffering. and for themselves. It's unconditional love for everything that's in front of you, which for Tibetan Gelug is the foundation for generating bodhicitta, which will help you on your path. Um, and that's what I leaned into, something that I can feel really something that can feel really counterintuitive, compassion for the aggressor. It's uncomfortable. Nobody really likes to think about that outside of Buddhist spaces, I noticed within my work. So, because from a Buddhist view, someone doing violent harm, we understand that they're also destroying themselves. We see that they're planting terrible, terrible causes and conditions. So you can oppose them and still recognize they're in delusion, and that matters because hatred, when we're talking about in a very diluted sense, feels like power in the moment, but it is kind of actually kind of a leash, I think, as they would say, a fetter, right? It binds you to the person that you're trying to resist, and again, that goes back to being counterintuitive. You're doing the work for them. And then so I think from there, we kind of package it up from there, and talk about equanimity. There are limits. There are moments um, where you do what you can and nothing changes. You see no result. Not cool. Nobody wants that, especially in this capitalistic immediacy stage that we're in with social media and internet and Amazon and dating apps and fast food. And it's just, but we have to have equanimity. If you don't, you burn out, you collapse, you are supernova. You become cynical, right? That's it. The light's gone. So equanimity isn't giving up. We need to be clear about that. It's perseverance, right? Um, it's persevering your energy, preserving your energy, excuse me, so you can keep helping where you actually can. And and then there's this tension between justice, as we usually talk about it, and the Buddhist priority of ending suffering, harm reduction. A lot of political movements are organized around punishment. We have to be honest about that too, around revenge, a final tally. But Buddhism is like, the world is deep, and the story goes long, and the cycles are old. And for simple moral accounting, we're not sure we're going to be able to use that as a barometer. So the question then becomes like, are we trying to punish or are we trying to end harm? And then from there, we understand interdependence. There is no end, but harm reduction. So I think the punchline for all this is basically, engaged Buddhism isn't about becoming morally pure while the world burns around you. More so, it's about refusing to let the world's violence recruit your body and mind. You have to resist. In that resistance, you're protecting people. You're refusing unethical orders. You build community by doing that. You speak truth skillfully. Um, you do it while you do it while guarding your integrity, because the integrity is the only protection you actually carry everywhere you go. So yeah, if I had one takeaway, it's our power is not in how hard we can hit back. Um, our power is in refusing to reproduce the conditions of suffering externally, internally, while still always showing up for people who need protection and care, as long as you're in a privileged position to give them that protection and care.
Well, thank you so much for offering your so many wonderful and very thoughtful takes on engaged Buddhism and its application, because it's these are the times for it. I mean, there are always the times for it, but these are the times for it. And I appreciate the degree to which you go into having a values-based response and reaction and way forward through oppressive circumstances. And I couldn't help but make this distinction or this note for myself while I was listening to you go over it. But um, when it comes to fighting fire with fire, and that being uh, ultimately a losing in the long run uh, approach. Uh, I couldn't help but think of like the oppressor as even our own minds in some way where uh, I can get into spells of negative thinking and cycles of it, and in a way have like that in a variety of definitions could be like a violence to myself, or it could be using not right speech to myself, and then putting myself into a on my own heels, and then there I am fighting with myself, and therefore I'm distracted and I can't be there, I can't be present, and otherwise can't be there and available to help someone else. And so it feels like, cleaning your own house is so important towards being then having space to then go out and help somebody else and do that. And something that I think about often is like hatred is drinking poison. Hatred and anger is drinking poison, hoping that the other person gets hurt. And it's like, well, that's probably not going to happen. Um, thank you for going over so much, especially too when you have these demonstrations like the Walk for Peace that are going on, that are
Mm,
they're captivating. I mean,
mm.
they're not really doing a whole lot. I mean, they're doing like physical feat for sure, but they're doing the walk, what from what I understand, for peace in themselves, and we're all watching that, and this kind of very interfaith reaction, some of which can be negative for sure. It's just you're just bound to have that. But there's a lot of support, a lot of like positive energy around people doing something just for the sake of peace. It doesn't matter where you come from or what angle you approach it. It's just they are doing it. So it's wonderful that you're having a talk with Rainbodhi about engaged Buddhism in these times, and it's certainly whether you see it with reactions to the Walk for Peace, but you also just see it in the faces of the people a part of your meeting, and otherwise it's just a very helpful thing to keep in mind as we navigate what we're navigating, which is just so much. And then also too, I mean, we uh, we talked a little bit about activism and things that it can look like, and I know that your Instagram handle for has had historically some decolonial uh, observations posted on it, but also too it has like a very amusing quality to it as well. And it seems very intentional the way that you're programming it. I was just wondering if it has something that it's doing something for you, and what the messaging behind it is.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, if I can go back real quick to just engage Buddhism real quick. First, I want to just show great appreciation to, while historically Buddhists have always showed up for their communities, whether it's building roads, hospitals, food banks, taking care of minority groups. I mean, the list is endless. Um, Buddhists as a whole haven't become socially aware of this label until Thich Nhat Hanh had called it out in the last century as engaged Buddhism. So really, we're standing on the shoulders of such a beautiful and compassionate human and Dharma master. So I just wanted to show appreciation for first before we moved on to Thich Nhat Hanh. I forgot to do that. Um, and as for the Walk for Peace, yeah, it's a great example of like, wow, who would have thought? Because the Walk for Peace, I even saw Walk for Peace mentioned on Fox News of all places. Not that right now the current media environment is right now in terms of the technocratic setup that we're kind of heading in is too great, but um, to see Walk for Peace popping up in these places I never would have thought is really, really, it shows that there's this lasting quality, and that even people who may not agree with it, they're getting a glimpse of the Dhamma in that moment. And we have to know that, that's planting seeds for them. And it may not ripen right now, but we can trust that it will eventually at some point. and sentient beings everywhere will be the benefactor of that ripening. So many prayers and offerings to all those amazing monastics who are doing that and using their bodies for good. As you mentioned, it's manual labor. Um, Back to your question, I assume you're talking about neoqueer. With a big smile on my face, I say that. Yeah, this Instagram has been such a curious thing. It has gone through so many waves of um, how shall I put it? Subversion. I think I am addicted to subversion. I don't know if that's my queer side. I don't know if that's my Tibetan Gelug side. I don't know if that's my artistic side, but I am addicted to subversion as a medium, as a form of communication. And so neoqueer right now operates, at face value, it doesn't look like there's a lot going there, but behind almost every post, there's kind of a thesis statement to be said about the current way that I see the world and how other people who may look like me or identify in the same ways as me also see the world. So it is a way to communicate in a decentralized way. That's what's very important to me. But also going back to creative ways of resisting, we're now aware that everything on the internet is being uploaded to AI and large language models. Um, every book has apparently already been through that, and now it's our turn. And there's this concept of digital permanency. And so I did stop neoqueer for a while, but I brought it back, maybe as a pressure valve release, maybe as artistic expression, but also as another form of resistance. And in this way, it's like, this big issue with something called AI slop. I love the name. Um, it's so funny. But so it's kind of like, well, fine. If they're going to use my data, I'm either A, going to make it difficult for them. That's where the subversion comes in. Or B, I'm going to make it ridiculous for them. I'm going to make the LLM, the large language model, I'm going to make the AI look at the most ridiculous and, quite frankly, trashy and disgusting memes, that I can think of to get my point across. And so, sort of like mucking up the waters is kind of a really fun way for me to play around in this new digital age. I think that's what keeps me curious about it and keeps me motivated to keep posting there. So yeah, I make memes because they're funny, and I also think that they are extremely relevant as an art form. Um, I think anybody who would argue against that, I don't think has much there. I think it's probably accepted that memes are art, and then to what degree we would ask that question. And so while I'm not calling myself an artist, the memes that I make are certainly making a statement, and the people that follow me understand that statement. And I think that's what matters is being able to communicate in a decentralized way. Um, as a queer person, that's resistance. That's existing, and it's public. It's all public. Anybody can go on my page and see that. I don't hide it. And yeah, I thank you for bringing neoqueer into it. Um, Anybody that's unaware of it, I'm sorry if you're looking it up right now.
No, I encourage it. It is, I think, believe it's neo underscore queer, I believe. And it's a lot of gallery based, it goes kind of those posts that you kind of those images where you can kind of flip through a few at a time. And so you make all those memes yourself? You make all you make all the work that's in each post. You make all those things with like Wario and stuff. You make that yourself?
Yeah, so anything that's tagged neoqueer on the photo itself is something that I've made digitally or physically. I had uploaded just recently a zine. I was making physical zines all last year and distributing them, but there's something special about them being physical, so I didn't want them to be digital, but that may change depending on needs. But anything that's tagged neoqueer on the actual photo is something that I've made through Photoshop. And then on it's amazing. Growing up, we used to have very expensive computers to do all this, and now I have Photoshop on my phone. And I can like go in and do all the things that I would do on my computer. It's really fascinating, and have my fonts and whatnot. And so, and then anything else that's not tagged by me, I'm taking from other creators, but they have their own tags. And so it's all accredited. And so it's in this way, I'm making my own, but I'm also curating a collection from around the web too. Um, yeah.
It's this kind of spontaneous artistic collective of subversion because even if you are collecting images from other people, you find a way to to make one coherent message, subversive message come up in each post, and it's great that you can kind of find a through line in so many different voices and different accounts have convey on a larger scale, I suppose, like a similar message. But it's quite amusing and it's it's really funny. So thank you for doing it. It is such a treat to come across. So I'm excited to look at more of what you're up to. And thank you for doing that work. I mean, yeah, there is something about it, just because activism isn't all serious and screamy and all that. I mean, like activism and subversive messages can be extremely playful and fun and shared. So thank you for doing that. I just had two quick questions for you as we come to a close for today, and that is one, if there's anything around promotion that you'd like to talk about, and then two, something around just general advice. And as we get into promotion, I just wanted to shine a light one more time on Rainbodhi USA. This is a community that supports LGBTQIA plus people, and it's very welcoming, inclusive of all shades, ethnicities, sexes, genders, sexualities, body shapes, abilities, and cultural identities. Events are free. There's a big online engagement to it. The values are inclusion, compassion, wisdom, and yeah, no, it's wonderful. And then also too, if there are people that are listening that are part of Sanghas that feel like they could include more facility around LGBTQIA plus community and have some guidelines around making their sanghas more accessible to more people. There is this wonderful uh, pamphlet. Booklet that's available, Welcoming the Rainbow: A Guide to LGBTQIA plus Inclusion for Buddhists, and it's available in a variety of languages as well. But yeah, if there's anything that you'd like to promote, oh yeah, I'm sorry. And the website is rainbodhi.org USA, RAINBODHI.org/USA. But yeah, if there's anything that you'd like to share, please feel free.
Thank you so much. Well, Vincent, you've done the hard work for me. You've promoted me in every way. Yeah, Rainbodhi. You pop it into Google and everything will come up. Rainbodhi. It's a play on rainbow, and of course the Bodhi tree, which Buddha found enlightenment under. What's unique about Rainbodhi, I don't know if I mentioned this, is that all of our teachers are queer, but we would love if allies would come and talk to us and join in our conversation. And what concerns do you have for us? What concerns do you have for you? And also, not everything is sometimes even concerning our queer identities when we're talking about things. Sometimes we're just talking about Buddhist things, or day-to-day life problems, or big existential problems. And so Rainbowdy is open to everybody, absolutely. No questions asked. Nobody's gonna ask you for your queer card at the door. You are welcome. And then yes, on Instagram, I am neoqueer, NEO_QUEER. And then Rainbowdy also has so many different social medias on Facebook, on Instagram, so please follow those. I wish I had something extra to share. Unfortunately, I have not gotten a total word on what I was looking forward to sharing with you all. So for right now, I'll have to keep that under wraps. But to say one more thing about Rainbowdy, if you are queer, and you want to join our community as a practitioner, please do. But also, if you are interested in running programming, if you are interested in being part of a panel, please contact me. My contact information, again, is either on our website or hit me up in the DMs on Instagram, and I'll be sure to respond. So yeah, open call for anybody that wants to help create Rainbodhi. I'm always looking for more people to help build our community. I think that's really important.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for making that available. And one more time for anybody looking to take a look at the website, it's rainbodhi.org/USA. And then when it comes to just general advice, my question is pretty open, and it's along the lines of if you what kind of advice would you have wanted to have heard as you were walking the Buddhist path earlier on in your life? Like what advice would you give to yourself?
Yeah, I think it's such a top-down question, right? What does our older self want to say to our younger self? And I'm so sorry I have to be contrarian, but I think it's quite the opposite. There's parts of my younger Buddhist self that I sometimes try to actually tap into. That, um, I was just talking with a friend about this. Is there's this kind of Buddhist quote about doubt without curiosity is laziness. And I remember, I mean, hopefully I've still come off as a curious person, but I think I was so much more curious when I was younger, right? And so for those that are just entering the path, embrace that curiosity, lean into it, don't be afraid of it. And that curiosity is going to come with a lot of upsets because you're looking at the older Buddhists who have established lineages, who have established sanghas, who have this and that, who know all the lists and all the teachings and blah blah blah. None of no, you'll get there, but that is not what it's about, right? That is not what it's about. And I can't explain to you what it's about because what it's about is so deeply personal. And what it's about is directly linked to that curiosity that you needed to continue to cultivate in order to hold compassion for all sentient beings. I think it's so important. So that's the advice I'm trying to remember from my younger self. Where did the curiosity go? Please let me cultivate it.
Tseme, thank you so much for speaking with me today. This is such a treat, and thank you for all your work with chaplaincy, with your work towards your chaplaincy, and also with Rainbodhi and your subversive zine and Instagram presence and activism work, as well as just this encouragement to stay curious and to let that curiosity inform you and to see how. Where it might lead and that energy that you get from staying curious is it's a great thing to remember. So I appreciate that that advice. But thank you for taking the time to speak with me today. I really do appreciate it.
Of course, I appreciate it so much, Vincent. It feels like we've been trying to do this for almost a year. I know it hasn't been that long, but I'm so glad to have finally done it. Thank you.